Bible experience.
Shalom, and bless the Comforter, the Yahshua HaMashiach. Romans chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. What advantage then hath YAHUDAH? Or what profit is there of circumcision? Much every way, chiefly because that unto them were committed oracles of Elohim. For what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of Elohim without effect? Elohim forbid. Yea, let Yahweh be true, but every man a liar, as it is written, that thou mightest be justified in thy sayings, and mightest overcome when thou art judged. Shalom. Bless the Comforter, the Yahshua HaMashiach.
Shalom. Bless the Comforter through Yahshua.
Shalom.
Welcome to the Sons of Promise House of Yahudah program. And on behalf of the saints, I'd like to thank you for joining us. My name is Hoshea ben Yahudah Israel, and I'll be your host for this week's Sons of Promise House of Yahudah program. The topic of our program this week is the Holy Days, Past, Present, Future, Part 2. And here to discuss this topic with me today are my brothers, Brother Exodus ben Yahudah Israel.
Shalom, elder brother.
Shalom, brother. And my brother Yohanan ben Yahudah Israel.
Shalom, elder brother.
Shalom, brothers, and welcome to this week's panel. In part 1 of the Holy Days, Past, Present, Future, we covered the historical, messianic, spiritual, and prophetic aspects and applications of the Feast of Trumpets, the Sabbath celebration, the Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. In this program, entitled Holy Days, Past, Present, Future, Part 2, we will use what we covered in Part 1 to gain a deeper understanding of the fall feast days. So, by the end of this program, you will see exactly how Yahweh's holy days reveal the plan of the return of the house of Yahudah to the land, the return of Yahshua to the earth, the restoration of the children of Israel, and the new city, Jerusalem. Now, we aren't talking about these events because they sound good. We're talking about these events because this has what's been prophesied. For the testimony of Yahshua is the spirit of prophecy. Reference Revelation 19, verse 10. So it is the spirit of Yahshua that is warning and preparing us for times to come. He is preparing us for the time when his angels shall say, Ho, ho, come forth and flee from the land of the north, saith Yahweh. For I have spread you abroad as the four winds of heaven, saith Yahweh. Reference Zechariah chapter 2, verse 6. So the deliverance of the house of Yahudah from the Americas is based on our holy days. It was also prophesied that we will sing songs of Zion, or Yahudah, in Psalms chapter 137, verses 1 through 4.
We're going to read Psalms chapter 137, beginning at verse 1. Verse 1. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hang our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there, they that carried us away captive required of us a song. And they that wasted us required of us mirth, saying, Sing us one of those songs of Zion. How shall we sing Yahweh's song in a strange land? The strange land is America, which is referred to in the book of Zechariah as the land of the north. And these songs of Zion, or Yahudah, are called Negro spirituals.
Songs like, oh, where should we be when the first trumpet sound? Or where should we be when it sounds so loud? When it sounds so loud as to wake up the dead? Or where should we be when it sounds? Or hush, somebody's calling my name. Or as song in Still Away, our Yah, he calls us. He calls us by the thunders. The trumpet sounds within our soul, in our souls. We ain't got long to stay here. See, this is what the house of Judah is proclaiming, which is, we ain't got long to be here. We're bound for the promised land. We ain't got long to be here. We got our ticket in our hand.
Like our elder tells us, do what you were told. Take care of Yah's business. It just might be your ticket out of here. See, all these songs are connected to the Feast of Trumpet and point toward our physical redemption out of America. The Feast of Trumpets is preparing the house of Yahudah to take the kingdom. So when the Feast of Trumpet comes, it is a wartime or a time of war, be it spiritual or physical. And this year, we celebrated the Feast of Trumpets on September 25th at even, which was on a Wednesday night, which was the 5th day. Now, let's reference Numbers chapter 29, verses 1 through 6.
Yes, let's read Numbers chapter 29, verse 1, 5, and 6. Verse 1. And in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall have an holy convocation. You shall do no servile work. It is a day of blowing the trumpets unto you. Trumpets is the first day of the 7th Hebrew month. It is a Sabbath and a new moon. The new moon starts the beginning of the Hebrew month. It is our monthly family reunion or gathering, which is a time to reflect and refresh. Verse 5. And 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering to make an atonement for you, beside the burnt offering of the month, and his meat offering, and the daily burnt offering, and his meat offering, and their drink offerings, according unto their manner, for a sweet savor, a sacrifice made by fire unto Yahweh. We read about these sacrifices because when Yahshua HaMashiach returns and sets up his kingdom on earth, mankind will have to sacrifice again. So once again, animal blood will be spilled to cover transgression of the law called sin, because we can't crucify Yahshua again. So this is why we always read about the sacrifices, because they are a shadow of things to come. You can reference Ezekiel 45, verse 16 through 17 also.
Now, let's go to the book of Acts and set up this time period. Acts chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. Verse 6. When they therefore were come together, they asked of him, saying, Adonai, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom of Israel? The restoration of the kingdom of Israel will come through Yahudah. Remember, it was Yahudah who gave up the kingdom, so it will be Yahudah who will take the kingdom back. And it will be Yahudah that will invade Jerusalem at the Feast of Trumpets.
Daniel chapter 7 verse 18 states, "But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever." Now let's go to Micah chapter 4 verse 8 to back this up. Micah chapter 4 verse 8 states, "And thou, O tower of the flock, the stronghold of the daughter of Zion, unto you shall it come, even the first dominion. The kingdom shall come to the daughter of Jerusalem." The daughter of Jerusalem is the house of David, which are the rulers of the house of Yehudah, and the daughter of Zion is referring to Yehudah. In 2 Samuel chapter 7 verses 12 through 16, Yahweh prophesied to King David that his house and the kingdom would be established forever. Let's go and read it. We're going to read 2 Samuel chapter 7 verses 12 through 16. Verse 12. And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up your seed after you, which shall proceed out of your bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever.
Yahshua, the son of David, is the seed whose kingdom and throne will be established forever. Remember, King Solomon had his kingdom taken away from him.
Verse 14. "I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men, and with the stripes of the children of men. But my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before you."
Again, mercy departed away from King Solomon because he worshipped strange gods in the land. But mercy never departed away from Yahshua, the king of Yahudah.
Verse 16. "And thine house and your kingdom shall be established forever before you. Your throne shall be established forever." This is why it's called the Davidic kingdom, because Yahweh told David that his house and kingdom would be established forever.
Now let's go back this up in the prophet Isaiah. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 9 and read verse 6 and verse 7. Verse 6 states, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty El, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David, and upon his kingdom to order it, and to establish it with judgment and with justice, from henceforth even forever. The zeal of Yahweh of hosts will perform this." It said upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, meaning David's kingdom. So this proves that Yahshua will rule the Davidic kingdom, and David shall be the prince in that kingdom. You can reference Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 24 and 25.
Now that we've established the Davidic kingdom and who will rule it, let's return back to Acts chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. Verse 6. "When they therefore were come together, they asked of him, saying, Adonai, will thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? And he said unto them, It is not for you to know the time or the seasons which our Yahweh hath put in his own power. But ye shall receive power after the Holy Ghost is come upon you, and ye shall be witnesses unto me, both in Jerusalem and in all Judea, and in Samaria, and unto the uttermost parts of the earth." Now Yahshua told the apostles at that time that it was not for them to know the times and the seasons which our Yah had in his own power. But Yahweh has shown us when these things occur, when these things will occur, because they will occur in our generation and during our lifetime. Truly, this is a time of revelation.
In part 1, we discussed that the prophetic future and spiritual aspects of trumpets deal with the assembly of the nation of Israel to move back into the promised land, the preparation to retake Jerusalem. Now let's go to Numbers chapter 10, verses 1 through 10, and see the house of Yehudah prepared to take the city of Jerusalem. But remember, There was another Negro spiritual we sang called "Come Out of the Wilderness," and this is where we will be coming out from when we march towards Zion. It will be a great day because the righteous are coming to tear Satan's kingdom down, and Yahweh is going to build up Zion's wall. We're going to read Numbers chapter 10, verses 1 through 10. Verse 1. And Yahweh spake unto Moshe, saying, Make you 2 trumpets of silver, of a whole piece shall you make them, that you may use them for the calling of the assembly and for the journeying of the camps.
So the silver trumpets are used for the calling of the assembly, which is why we blow the shofar before we assemble, and for the journeying or movements of the camps.
Verse 3. And when you shall blow with them, all the assembly shall assemble themselves to you at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And if you blow but with 1 trumpet, then the princes which are the head of the thousands of Israel shall gather themselves unto you. Yahweh is going to raise up the seed of David. These will be the princes in the wilderness. Verse 5. When you blow an alarm, then the camps that lie on the east part shall go forth.
We're going to take a break right now, and we're going to listen to a commentary from Prince Elder Priest Yaakov ben Yahudah Israel. Shalom, and bless the Comforter.
Shalom.
The nations are supposed to be what? Spiritual Israel, right? So once when Mashiach set up this kingdom and the nation be set up in their land, won't they be called his people? Okay. Everybody's going to be left on the surface. It's going to be called the children of the living God. That don't make you sons and daughters now. Okay, y'all know how that adoption thing works. Okay. The firstborn son, by law, gets a double portion. Well, we the firstborn sons. According to the word of Yahweh Elohim's will, we, the seed of our fathers, Prince Yaakov, are Elohim's chosen seed by covenants that has been sealed in blood. The children of Israel, because we the only one that Yahweh was in covenant with. He wasn't wounded for the sins of all the world. He was wounded for the children of Israel first. And then he sent them to the world.
Christian tell you, Yahweh knows to respect the person. That ain't what he says. Obviously, he respected Israel. He gave Israel all his holy thing to give to the other nations, right? We're the last nation raised up. He had already brought the blood upon the earth. He didn't deal with man. So he raised us up to tell man how to live and down. That's how we want to live like that.
Everyone that is called by my name, right? We ain't called Yahweh, y'all. Even everyone that is called by my name, right? For I have created him for my glory. I have formed Israel, yea, I have made. See, and folks tell me, well, Yahweh cast y'all. Here's a brother telling me this. He think he's a Gentile, right? Yahweh cast us off and chose us Gentiles. Paul said, I say then, as Yahweh cast away his people, Elohim forbid. But I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. Right, let them bring forth the witness and disprove this, or let them hear the word and say it's the truth. They got the book in the house, right? Well, he didn't mean that. He said it, but that ain't what he meant. Oh, this is a puzzle. I gotta figure out what he meant. It's plain. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not bear false witness. I'm the Yahweh your Elohim that brought you up out of Egypt. You shall bear witness of me. Bear witness where? To the whole of mankind. Well, why we got all these white folks in these churches that they call themselves preachers of we the servants? Huh? When you get back in Revelation 7, just before Yahweh got ready to pour his wrath upon this earth, right? Who will see you? All of Yahweh's servants, right? There was 12,000 from each one of our tribes, right? All these folks talk, oh yeah, we gonna forever be with the Lord. But when you get in chapter 14 of Revelation, wasn't nobody with the Messiah but that 144,000 and 4 and 20 elders. Believe that, that's book. Yahweh have redeemed Yaakov and glorified himself in Israel. But the apostles weren't only given gifts, they was given the Spirit.
of Yahshua, right? But when Peter went to that Gentile, what was he given? The gift of the Spirit, not the Spirit. Spirit, he told Jacob, say, I poured my Spirit upon your seed and my blessing upon your offspring. Then you can see how much spirit they got when they jump up and down in them churches with all that yin yang talking about. And then you go and say, what do you say? Right. It wasn't none of that jibber jabber. Everybody understood what was being said, right? Now they just start running off at the mouth in church and everybody speaking in tongues, especially that fool TDJ. Right. So Yahweh didn't mean none of that stuff. Christ nailed all of that to the cross. I mean, when Yahweh says something, like he said, the word is going out of my mouth, it's not going to return until it accomplishes all that I said, right? And all the things he said pertaining to what he's going to do for our people, them Gentiles, totally denied the church. Totally denied. That's why, if you notice, all those denominations we practice, look them up. I bet you they were started by some white boy less than 600 years ago. And Yahweh told, and Paul said, Israel was given the covenant, the service, the promise, the giving of the law, all the holy things that Yahweh was given to us. We went and taught the nation. Now the nation put us in captivity, and they teach us, and we love it so. You know what we say? Let this one come under your hand. I don't want to lose nothing. I just want to raise hell with you because you ain't doing what you're supposed to for me. Yahweh is king of this whole world. He created all flesh, and he's going to set up a governmental system so he can do things the way that he wants to do things. Like you said, the words that's gone out of my mouth, they shall not return to me in vain. They're going to accomplish what I sent them for. The thing of it is today, we just don't get his word. We get words of preachers that was taught by the adversary, the devil.
Shalom, and bless the Comforter through Yahshua HaMashiach. Welcome back to the Sons of Promise, House of Yehudah broadcast, brought to you by the sanctified and sanctioned body of the Culture Center of NCCI. My name is Brother Yohanan Yosef Ben Yehudah Israel, and I'll be covering the Standard Bearers News of Note. In this segment, we'll deal with current events that show us prophecy is being fulfilled. Reference Jeremiah chapters 50 and 51, and Revelation chapters 13 and 17. Our first article from secretsofthefed.com, Putin advisor, transition to new global economy will require war. Throughout the annals of history, revolution has never come easily, and almost inevitably is achieved through violent action or, in many cases, all-out war. For Russia, which understands the concept and history of revolution within their own peoples, the direction they see the world moving towards, especially in the economic plane, is a form of revolution against the old way. And as President Putin's advisor, Sergei Glazyev, ascertained, the revolution to change the global financial system will come by war, as it has in every single instance in history. The world today is going through a year of overlapping cyclical crisis. This is a period when the global economy is changing as the structure that has driven economic growth for 30 years has exhausted itself. The world needs to transition to a new system, and transition has always come about through war. Sergei Glazyev is not someone whose words are to be taken lightly, as he speaks for Putin as his close economic and geopolitical advisor. In fact, Glazyev was the first to suggest the use of dumping dollars and treasuries as a means to counter economic sanctions coming from Washington, and eventually sees the growing conflict between East and West escalating towards a violent confrontation. Our next article from the Telegraph, Vladimir Putin, don't mess with nuclear-armed Russia. Vladimir Putin raised the specter of nuclear war with the West as he defied international condemnation over his decision to send thousands of Russian troops and heavy armor into Ukraine. Accused by Europe and NATO of launching a full-scale invasion of eastern Ukraine, the Russian leader boasted to a group of Russian youngsters that it's best not to mess with us. In language not seen since the height of the Cold War, he told his audience, "Thank God, I think no one is thinking of unleashing a large-scale conflict with Russia. I want to remind you that Russia is one of the leading nuclear powers." Mr. Putin's comments made during a visit to a pro-Kremlin youth camp on the banks of a lake outside Moscow will horrify Western governments as they try to bring Russia into check. The soldiers are believed to be the backbone of a lightning counteroffensive that has seen pro-Kremlin rebels in eastern Ukraine claw back large swaths of territory from Ukrainian government forces in recent days, dramatically turning the tide in the 4-month conflict. A major battle is expected in the port city of Mariupol in the coming days, where Ukrainian forces are dug in anticipation of a full-scale assault by the rebels, backed by Kremlin forces. Even during the height of the Cold War hostilities, few Kremlin leaders ever resorted to the direct mention of Russia's nuclear arsenal. He made his remarks as European leaders prepared to gather for an emergency summit to discuss further sanctions on Moscow over the appearance in the last few days of more than 1,000 regular Russian troops in eastern Ukraine. Isaiah chapter 47 verses 8 and 9 and 11 states, "Therefore hear now this, you that are given to pleasures, that dwell carelessly, that sayest in your heart, I am, and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall come to you in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon you in their perfection, for the multitude of your sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. Therefore shall evil come upon you, you shall not know from whence it cometh. And mischief shall fall upon you, you shall not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon you suddenly, which you shall not know." We will now return to our panel discussion of the holy days, past, present, and future. Shalom, and bless the Comforter through Yahshua HaMashiach.
Shalom, and bless the Comforter. Welcome back to the Sons of Promise House of Yahudah program. And this week's program is entitled The Holy Days, Past, Present, Future, Part 2. We left off in Numbers chapter 10, verses 1 through 10. We're going to pick up where we left off. Now, we know that the camp lies on the east is Yahudah. And when it is time to take the journey, they will be the first ones to move towards Zion.
We're going to pick it back up in verse 6 in Numbers chapter 10. Verse 6. "When you blow an alarm the second time, then the camps that lie on the south side shall take their journey. They shall blow an alarm for their journeys. But when the congregation is to be gathered together, you shall blow, but you shall not sound an alarm."
This is the trumpet that is going to call us up out of America. First, the trumpet will blow so that we can assemble together, and then an alarm will sound for us to depart. And this is the same trumpet that will sound to assemble the house of Judah in the wilderness to invade Jerusalem.
Verse 8. "And the sons of Aaron the priest shall blow with the trumpets, and they shall be for you, and they shall be to you for an ordinance forever throughout your generations. And if you go to war in your land against the enemy that oppresses you, then you shall blow an alarm with the trumpets, and you shall be remembered before Yahweh your El, and you shall be saved from your enemies."
So you can see the importance of following these commandments. When you go to war, we must sound an alarm so that Yahweh will remember us, so that he will save us from our enemies.
Verse 10. "Also in the day of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginning of your months, you shall blow with the trumpet over your burnt offerings, and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for a memorial before your El. I am Yahweh, your El."
Let's go to Zechariah chapter 12, verse 4 through 8, and read what happens when we invade Jerusalem. Zechariah chapter 12, verse 4, and it states, "In that day, saith Yahweh, I will smite every horse with astonishment, and his rider with madness. And I will open mine eyes upon the house of Judah, and will smite every horse of the people with blindness. And the governors of Yehudah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength, and Yahweh of hosts their El.
The governors of Yehudah are the seed of Dawid.
Verse 6. In that day will I make the governors of Judah like a hearth of fire among the wood, and like a torch of fire in the sheaf. And they shall devour all the people round about, on the right hand and on the left. And Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. Yahweh also shall save the tents of Judah first, that the glory of the house of Dawid and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. In that day shall Yahweh defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as David, and the house of Dawid shall be as Elohim, as the angel of Yahweh before them.
Let's go to Zechariah chapter 9, verses 13 through 16. Verse 13. When I have bent Judah for me, filled the bow with Ephraim, and raised up thy sons, O Zion, against thy sons, O Greece, and made thee as a sword of a mighty man. And Yahweh shall be seen over them, and his arrow shall go forth as the lightning, and Yahweh Elohim shall blow the trumpet, and shall go with whirlwinds of the south. Yahweh of hosts shall defend them, and they shall devour and subdue with sling stones, and they shall drink and make a noise as through wine, and they shall be filled like bowls, and as the corner of the altar. And Yahweh their El shall save them in that day as the flock of his people, and they shall be as the stones of a crown, lifted up as an ensign upon his land. You can also reference Zechariah chapter 10, verses 1 through 6, to prove that Yahudah will fight and prevail at Jerusalem.
Okay, let's back this up with Zechariah chapter 14, verse 14. Verse 14. And Yahudah also shall fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the heathen round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver and apparel in great abundance. So Yahudah is the bait for Yahweh's trap. Once Yahudah returns to the land and takes the city of Jerusalem, this will cause all the nations that will come up against Yahudah and Jerusalem, and this is why Yahshua is on his way to deliver his people. The scene is set for Armageddon. It's going to be time to burn it down so that the land can be cleansed. And you can read Deuteronomy chapter 7, and it will explain what Yahudah will do when we take the land. The next feast is the Sabbath celebration, which is a satellite to the Day of Atonement.
Let's go to Leviticus 23 and read verse 32, which states, In the 9th day of the month, at even, from even unto even, shall you celebrate your Sabbath. Here, Yahweh says, celebrate your Sabbath. But in Exodus 31 and 13, he said, keep my Sabbath. So there is a distinction between the two. So what Yahshua has shown us is this. You feast before the atonement, and this is why his laws are not grievous. He commanded us to celebrate before the atonement. So at this time, all that were in the secret place of the wilderness will be crying out to Yahweh for Yahshua to come because of all the armies that are coming up. So we will truly celebrate when we see our deliverer over our heads. Then it will be time to enter into that rest the Apostle Saul spoke about in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 1 through 8.
The Day of Atonement reference Leviticus chapter 23, verses 26 through 32. The prophetic future and spiritual aspect of the Day of Atonement is the second coming of the Messiah and atonement of sins on earth through the shedding of the blood with the death of the unrighteous. It is at this last or seventh trump, reference Revelation chapter 11, verses 15 through 19, that speaks of Yahshua's return and the resurrection of the 144,000, which are from the 12 tribes of Israel. And no Gentiles are included in this, and they will meet Yahshua in the air to return to the earth with him. It shall be a day of feasting for the fowls of the air to eat upon the flesh and blood of wicked men on the earth. As they spill the blood of the righteous, so shall the blood spill as a recompense, atonement for sin, then shall the earth be at one mint with the Creator.
We're going to read Revelation chapter 19, verses 11 through 19. Verse 11. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. And he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. And in righteousness he does judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Yisrael. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he shall smite the nations, and he shall rule them with the rod of iron, and he treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty Israel. And he have on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Adonai of Adonais. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, Come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great Ale, that you may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And you can reference Ezekiel chapter 39, verses 17 through 21 to back this up. Verse 19. And I saw the beasts and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army.
The Feast of Tabernacles. The Feast of Tabernacles is the seventh feast. It depicts Elohim's rest just like the pattern which Yahweh designed in Genesis 2 and 2, in which Israel rested, did commanded us to rest by his own example. Just as Elohim tabernacles with the Israelites in the wilderness, Yahshua tabernacled with man in his first coming and will come again to tabernacle with man in his messianic kingdom forever. The spiritual application of tabernacle is a rest, Shabbat or Sabbath in English, in the Messiah, having the rest of his kingdom in our hearts, with Yahshua dwelling in our midst. The prophetic future and spiritual aspect of tabernacles is entering the Sabbath rest, the millennial kingdom, and dwelling in Jerusalem with Yahshua, King of kings, for 1,000 years on earth in complete peace and righteousness. The saints, which are Hebrew Israelites and spiritual Israelites, shall reign with Yahshua for 1,000 years, as is described in Revelation chapter 20 and verse 4. When Yahshua establishes his kingdom on earth, all nations will celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles from year to year. You can reference Zechariah chapter 14, verse 16 through 19.
Eighth day of Tabernacle. This day represents the eighth day, which is when we will be translated to the new heaven and the new earth, called the new city, Jerusalem. Revelations 21, verses 1 through 4. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from Israel out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of Israel is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Israel himself shall be with them, and he be their El. And Israel shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. On behalf of the saints, we would like to thank you for tuning in to our panel discussion. And at this time, we will review Yahweh's fall feast days. We celebrated the Feast of Trumpets last fifth day, which was on a Wednesday night, on September 25th. And our next holy day will be the Sabbath celebration. This will occur on October 3rd, on the eve, on a sixth day, which is a Thursday night. And the Day of Atonement will be on October 4th, on the eve of the Sabbath, which is a Friday night. Then we will celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, Day 1, on October 9th at even, which is on the 5th day, on a Wednesday night. It is a Sabbath, and all males must appear. You can reference Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 16. On the 8th day of the Tabernacles, which will be October 16th at even, which is on the 5th day, Wednesday night, it is a Sabbath also. We are located at 3711 North Decatur Road, Suite 104, in Decatur, Georgia, 30032. We are led by our beloved elder priest, Elder Isaias ben Yahudah Israel, who can be reached at 404-849-8979. Also, our email address is contact@sbocc@gmail.com. And coming up next, we will be playing a commentary by our Prince, Elder Priest, Yaakov ben Israel. Shalom, and bless the Comforter through Yeshua. YAHUDAH!
Now, when we read the book tells us that the first job that the Mashiach has when he returns on this earth is to put down all rule, right? And then gather his people from the four corners of the earth, right? Right? And then that'll happen through what? The blowing of the trumpet of the Jubilee on the Day of Atonement. According to the law. Everything is done according to the law, but man don't know the law, so man don't want to deal with it. This is why we are told, let this word dwell richly within you. This is why we have to meditate in the law, because the law, the first five books cover it. Everything you need is in the first 5 books. The apostles and that life and all that other stuff, man, that just added gravy to it. And I bet you one thing, ain't gonna be no vote booth set up, no place for you to go pull no leaves. You believe that? Yahweh set up things the way that He set up kings on the earth. And we gonna go vote. Well, we don't want this king here. We want that one over there, right? And then they throw the votes in the Mississippi River, everywhere, right? We still just as bad. What do you think politics do for us? But yet still we quick to run it up, walk around all that passion. I vote. Right. Yahweh told you, don't vote for nobody else to be ruler over you, right? Well, if you don't vote, don't cry. I ain't right. What I'm doing is abiding my time and trying to get my job done, because my salvation is at hand. I don't care what you do. You vote for anybody you want to. Living in a world that's captivated by paganism and wealth, Yahweh Elohim has placed us to be a brazen wall in these critical times. The irony is that the nations must come to the Hebrews that they enslaved, Christianized, and taught their ways and values, that is, if they want salvation. Today, modern values and ideas through the carnality of men does despite to the very essence of the covenant of salt at Mount Sinai. Being raised up by pagans and learning their ways and customs, the challenge we face is not just to overcome the wrath of these evils, but to walk worthy in the reason Yahshua's holy sacrifice has gathered us, and live in the purpose for which Israel is being reborn again into the world of man. Well, folks think he was just talking about the book of Revelation. I've been through that with some folks. They think he was just talking about the book of Revelation because it's what's written in the book of Revelation. But what they don't understand is that you can't just read Revelation all the way through. You got to read so far, figure all that stuff, go back in the prophets, let the prophets put that back in place, then move a little further, go back in the prophets, back and forth in the prophets, and let the prophets put it in place. Then you know, y'all know exactly everything that's going to take place between now and the time of Messiah. Why? Because it's written in the law of the prophets. See? The mother folks, they have to surmise. It's a spooky thing going to happen to them. Right, you knew what the deal was, and then you kept on doing. So now, before, you didn't know, when you didn't know, you were in charge of it.
But now that you say you see, you ain't got no covering for your seat. Go ahead. And I'm going to make sure, if you come here and sit in that seat, I'm going to make sure you see. Whether you like me, whether you want to talk to me, I really don't care. You know why? Neither one of you can add 1 minute to my life. Okay.
Shalom, and bless the Comforter through Yahshua HaMashiach. Welcome back to the Standard Bearers News of Note. Our next article from Zero Hedge, the nail in the petrodollar coffin. Gazprom begins accepting payment for oil in ruble and yuan. Several months ago, when Russia announced the much-anticipated Holy Grail energy deal with China, some were disappointed that despite this symbolic agreement meant to break the petrodollar stranglehold on the rest of the world, neither Russia nor China announced payment terms to be in anything but dollars. In doing so, they admitted that while both nations are eager to move away from a US dollar reserve currency, neither is yet able to provide an alternative. This changed in late June when first Gazprom CFO announced the gas giant was ready to settle China contracts in yuan or rubles. And at the same time, the People's Bank of China announced that its assistant governor, Jin Qi, and Russian Central Bank Deputy Chairman, Dmitry Skobelkin, held a meeting in which they discussed cooperating on project and trade financing using local currencies. The meeting discussed cooperation in bank card, insurance, and financial supervision sectors. And yet, while both sides declared their operational readiness and eagerness to bypass the dollar entirely, such plans remained purely in the arena of monetary foreplay, and the long-awaited first shot across the petrodollar bow was absent until now. According to Russia's RIA Novosti, citing Business Daily Commercant, Gazprom has agreed to export 80 tons of oil from the Arctic. It will accept payment in rubles and will also deliver oil via the Eastern Siberia Pacific Ocean pipeline, accepting payment in Chinese yuan for the transfers. Meaning Russia will export energy to either Europe or China and receive payment in either rubles or yuan, in effect making the two currencies equivalent as far as the Eurasian axis is concerned, but most importantly, transact completely away from the US dollar. Thus, finally, Putin in action, the move for a petrodollar-free world. Our final article comes from TheTrumpet.com. Everything is awesome. The world is burning, but you wouldn't know it, judging by statements coming from the White House. America's leaders can fiddle away and pretend that the nation isn't burning if they like. But facts are, as former U.S. President John Adams once said, are stubborn things. By any objective indicator, the United States of America is far worse off than it was 5 or 6 years ago. We have added $7 trillion to the national debt just under this administration. Americans are already overtaxed, and the nation itself is bankrupt. No nation has ever been able to dig out of a financial pit this size. Look at our moral decline, the breakdown of the family, and the epidemic of teen sex, cohabitation, same-sex marriage, children born out of wedlock, and the curse of all curses, fatherlessness. Think about what family life is like along the crime-ridden streets of Chicago, Detroit, and New York. Look at the race war in Ferguson. Look at the assault on the U.S. Constitution. Look at the lawlessness promoted at the southern border, where hardened criminals and gang members are streaming across the Rio Grande, along with all other illegals. Everywhere we look, we see authority, discipline, and justice being undermined by a spirit of rebellion and disobedience. And look at the insatiable appetite Americans have for popular culture, for celebrities, sporting events, and all other forms of entertainment. Think about the gross ignorance and blindness of the average American who sincerely believes that everything, for the most part, is awesome. If you have eyes to see and ears to hear, be forewarned. When the ambassadors of peace proclaim peace and safety, when they say everything is awesome, beware, sudden destruction. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 3 states, For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them. As travail upon a woman with child, they shall not escape. This has been the Standard Bearers News of Note. We'll next have a narration from our Prince Elder Yaakov ben Yisrael. Shalom, and bless the Comforter through Yahshua HaMashiach.
Well, we know that that's not the people over there in Israel today, because ever since the first day they went in there in 1948, blood has been shed. Their blood has been being shed in that land. He's saying they ain't going to be afraid. I'm going to make him lie down safely, right? Well, why is this nutcase over there in Persia, why he talking about wiping Israel off the face of the map? They died in droves, and we know it. Go ahead and read, brother. Right. That's why George Bush is down in South America now trying to get everybody to justify this mess he doing. You know why? He done swept them people off his page, off his desk for all these years, all the presidents have. Now all of a sudden, they're going down there. You know why? The mother company's coming in there, brother. See, they got all that oil down there in the Florida Straits and so forth, and they can't even tap it. Ain't that something? America can't tap it. They wait for their favorite son, China, to come in and tap it to them. And we know when we get in the book of Revelation, man, let's understand one thing. The Chinese are Asian. Don't you think they're going to be behind Russia when Russia destroy America? Okay. I remember now, you read the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah was talking to the children of Israel. The prophets did not go to the Gentiles unless, in the case of Nahum the Syrian, he sent for the prophet and the prophet came down. He still didn't want to do what the prophet said do, but he ended up doing it. But no, historically, the prophets were sent to Yahweh's people to warn Yahweh's people. This is when they came up and took Benjamin out of the land. Benjamin the Jew, well, Benjamin was in the land, and that's what they're referring to there, because that's where they really invaded, down through Benjamin's land. And Benjamin is over here. We know he's up in South Carolina, up there, them Geechee folks. Don't y'all be snickling about them Geechees now. Your church secretary is a Geechee. Okay. She wanted to try. Go ahead, brother.
When we consider the earth's estate in these latter days and understand the reason why Yahshua has come unto us, surely we see that it's because of our Father's love for his chosen people of the children of Israel and those that he has already decreed should receive salvation. Not just his chosen, but like I said, also to those called of the nations that Yahweh Elohim created also. Being of the salt of the earth, we've been charged with a glorious mission, Israel, just as all the holy seeds were called to their purpose. So to aid us in our task, he that ascended on high has given us gifts to fight a war against spirits. This is why we are taught to see and understand our purpose, because of the foundation that we are building upon. But to be faithful in these works requires commitment to our Elohim, whose tabernacle is in heaven, and obedience to his word that teaches us how we must walk. So when the decree go forth and we see these things come to pass and folks start getting up out of here and we decide that, well, I want to stay. I don't want to go no place else. I want to stay right here in America. Ain't that what happened down in Louisiana? Okay, go ahead and read, brother. In other words, he said, we read in Ezekiel where he said he's going to purge out from among us the rebels, and they will not enter the land of Israel. So we can very well see only 1 in 3 of the people that's going to make it out of this country is going to make it into the land of Israel. As we see Israel, Yahweh Elohim has not left us alone to die in this captivity in a strange land. But because of his curses upon our fathers and the children not under the blood, his holy angels will deliver us from this land to a land he has made ready to receive his saints. Then will he command Lucifer's wrath to destroy Miss Liberty, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Right. Once America sinks off into these waters that she sits on, remember now, she sits on the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Bering Straits, don't she? When she slides off into that water, we can see, they talking about 50-foot waves, we can see something bigger than that, then, can't we? A whole continent, a whole tectonic plate is being destroyed. A whole continent is going under the water. But go ahead and read and see what's going to happen, bro.
Revelation chapter 5, verse 5. We who are now colonizing this strange land called America, or the daughter of Babylon, are the direct descendants of the house of Yahudah, Yahweh's pleasant land. Our holy city, Jerusalem, the most precious land of all the earth, and the great temple of Yahweh were razed to the ground, and there was massive deportation of Yahudah, the so-called Negroes, into captivity into the daughter of Babylon. The great poetic book of Psalms written by King David prophesied of this when he wrote, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. This is also reminiscent of what happened when our captors brought us to America, who is referred to in the scriptures as the daughter of Babylon. For there they that carried captive required of us a song, and they that wasted us required of us mirth, saying, sing us one of those songs of Zion. How shall we sing Yahweh's song in a strange land? Psalms chapter 137.